20 of the ugliest convertibles of all time. Let's turn back time together to revisit some convertibles, symbols of freedom, style, and sunny drives. Oh, but not every car is a dream when it comes to looks. There are some models that, when you see them, you can't help but wonder how they ever passed aesthetic review to go into mass production. Join me as we count down the 20 convertibles dubbed the ugliest of all time. These disasters that perhaps should never have existed. I bet you'll definitely remember a few names on this list, or even seen them rolling down the road. Let's discover how these design accidents made famous car brands blush. BMW Baur 3 Series, 1975. When we think of classic BMWs, the image of a convertible often comes to mind, right? However, when BMW introduced the E21 sedan and coupe, also known as the 3 Series, in 1975, there was no factory convertible option. Instead, BMW turned to Baur Carrosserie, a bodywork specialist, to transform the 3 Series coupe into a convertible. Baur, a company with a history dating back to 1910 that had even designed bodies for the BMW M1 and Porsche 959, developed a design called the Top Cabriolet, or TC. This design wasn't a convertible in the traditional sense. In the mid-70s, convertibles were viewed unfavorably due to rollover safety concerns. So Baur learned from the Porsche 911 Targa, retaining the side windows and the roof rails surrounding them, offering an open-top driving experience while minimizing rollover risk. Baur's TC design allowed the roof section above the front seats to be removed or folded to create a large sunroof, and a fabric section behind the plastic window could fold back. These Baur cars were officially approved BMWs and could be ordered from BMW dealerships. Although BMW later produced its own 3 Series convertibles, Baur continued to offer its TC version as an alternative. However, few people actually wanted them, leading to only about 300 units being produced based on the E36. Just imagine, a complete 3 Series brought to the factory and they'd cut off the roof. What an incredible idea. Saab 900 Convertible. The Saab 900 Convertible is a name that must be mentioned on this list, but for a reason quite contrary to many others. It's considered a complete contradiction between the safety and interior comfort of its features and its exterior appearance. Saab, a brand renowned for its engineering innovation and safety, seemed unable to translate those values into the look of the 900 convertible. Although the car was fully equipped with advanced safety features and a comfortable, user-friendly interior, its convertible design wasn't very eye-catching. Instead of an elegant or sporty appearance, the Saab 900 convertible was often criticized for having disproportionate ratios or looking quite clunky with the top down. Converting a hardtop version to a convertible often requires significant structural changes to maintain chassis rigidity, and it seems that in the case of the Saab 900, those changes affected the overall aesthetics. Still, Saab 900 convertible owners loved it for its unique driving experience and the sense of safety it provided, despite the whispers about its exterior. Ferrari Mondial. Can you believe it? Even the famous Italian car brand Ferrari could create supercars that were not beautiful? The Ferrari Mondial 8, launched in 1980, is the clearest proof of that. This car was discontinued after just 2 years to make way for more powerful and beautiful Mondial models. There's even an opinion that this model was born when designers suddenly changed their minds while drawing an amphibious vehicle. The Mondial 8's design was criticized for having quite awkward proportions due to its 262-centimeter wheelbase. For this reason, it's considered one of the ugliest Ferraris ever produced. Despite boasting a 3.0-liter V8 engine with 214 horsepower, the Mondial 8 could only reach 100 kilometers per hour in 62 miles per hour in 9.4 seconds. a figure not very impressive for a Ferrari. What's even more notable is that in 1981, this car cost up to $64,000, equivalent to over $165,000 today. This price was even more expensive than a Porsche 930 Turbo or the famous Ferrari 308. With such an exorbitant price and an appearance that didn't match, would you be willing to spend your money on a car like that? AMC Eagle and Concord Sundancer, 1980. In 1980, with its long-term future in serious doubt, American Motors, AMC, needed something fresh and exciting to get customers into their showrooms. They'd seen how Toyota had offered a convertible version of its compact Celica Coupe, which was engineered by Jack Griffith. In 1979, the second-generation Celica had no factory-installed soft top, so Griffith engineered a soft top for the rear portion of the roof and windows, along with a removable fiberglass panel above the front seats. This design was similar to that of the BMW Baur, except there were no roof rails above the windows on the Celica. Instead, a reinforced basket handle design extended across the extended B-pillars. While Griffith only converted around 2,000 Celicas, its success was enough for Griffith to offer struggling AMC the chance to do the same for their cars, and AMC took them up on it. In 1980, AMC offered its Concord and Eagle models, both of which shared similar architecture from the discontinued Hornet. AMC hadn't sold a convertible since the 1968 Rambler Rebel, so having these nearly convertible cars was the next best thing for AMC. Instead of the Sunchaser name used on the Celica, AMC's versions were dubbed the Sundancer and featured a similar fiberglass top forward of the basket handle B-pillars with a folding fabric section around the plastic rear window. However, unlike the already sporty Celica, the Concord and Eagle were much less athletic and simply didn't look right without a roof, and looked especially strange on the taller four-wheel drive Eagle. Only about 200 units were converted, and that, along with the fact that the big three automakers were beginning to bring back factory-produced convertibles, caused Griffith's company to close down after the last Sundancer left his factory in 1982. Renault Alliance, 1985. The Sundancer's failure wasn't AMC's last convertible, though technically, this next one had more French DNA than American. Renault had taken a controlling stake in American Motors in 1979, and as a result, many of the products they sold were rebadged Renault models for sale in the American market. The 2- and 4-door Alliance models and similar 3- and 5-door Encore models were marketed primarily to economy-conscious buyers, with a basic 1.4-liter 4-cylinder engine, making just 64 horsepower. By 1985, however, Alliance sales were trending down, in part due to decreasing quality and reliability. So, AMC needed to do something to attract new buyers. Along with the addition of a sporty GTA model, the Alliance was now available as a convertible, and the top-end model, combining both, was marketed as the Renault GTA Convertible, dropping the Alliance name from the title. Unlike the previous two entries on this list, where convertible conversions meant cutting the tops off after the cars left the factory, the Alliance convertible was built right alongside the coupe and sedan models at AMC's Kenosha, Wisconsin factory. However, with assistance from the American Sunroof Corporation, or ASC, the car's poor reputation for quality, coupled with falling gas prices leading to more larger car options on the market, conspired to seal its fate. It truly was an unfortunate case of an economy car trying to be a trendy convertible. Chrysler LeBaron Convertible, 1987 to 1995. Looking at the Chrysler LeBaron Convertible, we can't help but ask puzzling questions. Why did a car have wood paneling on the outside? Why did the nose droop so ugly? This car is a typical example of baffling design decisions, making it one of the most aesthetically unappealing convertibles. The convertible version of the LeBaron, produced from 1987 to 1995, attempted to offer luxury and style at a more affordable price than its premium competitors. However, instead of success, it became known for its bizarre design details. The use of faux wood panels on the exterior, a style once popular on some classic cars but which became out of place and outdated by the late 80s and early 90s, made the LeBaron convertible look like a patchwork, lacking sophistication. The drooping nose, also known as the dolphin nose, was also a major point of contention, disrupting the overall balance and making the car look heavy and less sleek. These elements contributed to positioning the LeBaron convertible on the list of the hardest to look at cars in automotive history. Dodge Dakota, 1987. This is the only pickup truck on this list, and you might wonder why it's included, when other pickups like the Chevy K5 Blazer or Ford Bronco were also initially available as convertibles. It's simply that those vehicles were designed to be convertibles from the start. The Dakota, when it first went into production in 1986 for the 1987 model year, was never planned to be anything other than a completely enclosed mid-size pickup. Dodge had a large fan base for its full-size Ram pickups, but until the Dakota, they had no significant competitor to the smaller Chevy S10 and Ford Ranger. The idea of a convertible pickup truck first came from Jerry York, then Chrysler's CFO, who had seen homemade chop-top pickups in California and thought Chrysler should offer one from the factory. Low sales volume meant this would be a good case to use ASC to perform the conversions. Lowering the top meant you lost access to part of the truck bed, and it also required an additional roll bar, not for structural reinforcement, but to provide seatbelt attachment points. Dodge even avoided using the term roll bar to discourage owners from testing them as such. But alas, this unique idea didn't sell as well as Dodge hoped, with less than 3,000 units sold by 1989 and sales dropping by 2/3 the next year, leading to its sad end when only 8 units were sold in 1991. It's hard to believe an idea not based on any market research or rationality was implemented. Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, 1988 to 1997. Oldsmobile was an American car manufacturer founded in 1897 and went bankrupt in 2004, unable to compete with other rivals. One of the reasons was probably their terrible design style, and the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme convertible, produced from 1988 to 1997, is a prime example. Although the Cutlass line in general was quite popular, its convertible version received much criticism regarding aesthetics. It looked like a car that had been hastily trimmed, lacking the smoothness and balance a convertible should have. The body did not appear to be originally designed to accommodate roof removal, leading to odd proportions and a heavy, less elegant appearance that one would expect from a convertible. Moreover, the absence of a fixed hardtop would require significant chassis reinforcement, which could have increased weight and affected the driving experience, though not detailed in the source. Perhaps such short-sighted design decisions contributed to Oldsmobile's ultimate demise. Yugo Cabrio, 1990. Yes, the car that set the gold standard for car jokes. The Yugo, at one point, was produced as a convertible, albeit very briefly, so much so that you've probably never seen one in real life. The standard two-door hatchback version began being imported from Yugoslavia to the United States in 1985. Produced by Zastava, a former Yugoslavian military arms manufacturer, the car was heavily based on the Fiat 127 and 128. The standard Yugo GV hatchback retailed for just $3,990, about half the cost of a Chevy Chevette. By 1987, 5 different versions of the Yugo were offered, including the upscale GVX model, leading to sales of over 48,000 units that year alone. But by 1990, the Yugo's quality and reliability had made it clear why the car was so cheap. The outbreak of war in Yugoslavia also hampered the company's ability to export to the US. To try to boost sales, a convertible version was offered, but to keep the price as low as possible, the ragtop still used the Yugo's 1.3-liter engine with a 2-barrel carburetor, not the fuel-injected version other Yugo models had by that point, leading to just 61 horsepower. Even so, the convertible's sticker price was $8,900, more than double the cost of the hatchback. For that money, however, you did get a glass rear window with an electric defroster. Only 500 convertibles were produced. Fewer than 100 made it to the US before the war in Yugoslavia finally halted all imports in 1991. If you still own a Yugo Cabrio in good condition today, believe it or not, its value might be much higher than when it was new. Geo Metro, 1990. Like the previous car on this list, this is another example of hoping a convertible option on a small, cheap car could help boost sales. And also, like the previous one, this didn't really help here. But unlike the Yugo, a few thousand were sold. So you have a better chance of seeing one on the road today. The Geo Metro was one of 4 Japanese cars GM sold under their new Geo brand. If you lived in Canada, the same car was sold under the Pontiac Firefly name. Or you might have the same car badged as a Suzuki Swift, though Suzuki badged it as the Cutlass in Japan. The Metro, Firefly, and Swift models were built in Ontario at the Kami plant, which was a 50-50 joint venture between GM and Suzuki at the time. However, not all Metro models were built there. Convertibles were built in Japan and first became available halfway through the 1990 model year. The ragtop not only eliminated the practicality of the hatchback version, but it also lost the back seat because the top folded into the position of the back seat. It still had a trunk, but much less capacity than the hatchback. And although the convertible version was only available on the upscale LSI version, it still only had a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine and 13-inch wheels. The car got 50 miles per gallon, but only because of its very small size and tiny engine. The convertible cost over $11,000 new, almost double the price of a basic Metro. With sales peaking at 16,000 in 1991, it dropped to just 6,500 by 1993, the final year of that generation. And not surprisingly, the convertible did not return in '94. Rover 100 Convertible. The Rover 100 Convertible only lasted 4 years, 1994 to 1998, after which it was replaced by a radically upgraded Rover version. The reason can be easily seen with the naked eye. This is another example of a small, compact car, originally designed for practicality and economy, being reluctantly turned into a convertible, resulting in a less aesthetically pleasing and functional product. The Rover 100, initially a small city car, did not possess the soft design lines or chassis structure strong enough to easily convert into a convertible while maintaining a balanced appearance. When the roof was removed, the body could become weaker, requiring additional chassis reinforcement, increasing weight and cost. These changes often led to awkward vehicle proportions and a loss of its original harmony. Additionally, designing a sophisticated folding roof system for an economy car could be a major challenge, affecting reliability and trunk space. The short lifespan of the Rover 100 Convertible is proof that not every car is suitable for a convertible makeover. Mitsubishi 3000 GT Spyder. This car easily was the most suitable on this list to offer a convertible version. What qualifies it for this list is that Mitsubishi decided not to offer a folding soft top, but instead a folding hardtop on a car not designed for it. They did so about a decade before the folding hardtop trend exploded in the mid-2000s, making it the first production car to offer this feature since the 1959 Ford Fairlane 500 Skyliner. The 3000 GT was a joint effort with Chrysler, who sold their version under the Dodge Stealth name. but Dodge never had a convertible version. Instead, American Sunroof Corporation, ASC, only performed the conversions on the 3000 GT, and only 1,034 were built at the very end of its second generation in 1995 and 96. The 3000 GT Spyder was offered as a naturally aspirated front-wheel drive version called the SL, or the much more desirable 300 horsepower all-wheel drive VR4 version, and 604 of the 1,034 Spyders built started as VR4s. The cheaper SL version started at around $57,000, which is around $113,000 today. So, it was a hard sell, especially since a folding hardtop had no recent precedent to convince buyers that it would be reliable long-term. It also meant zero cargo space when the top was down, other than what you could cram into the tiny back seat, a far cry from what it had been previously as a hatchback. While it did make the car more weather-resistant year-round, the 3000 GT wasn't exactly a four-season car even with all-wheel drive. The extra 400 pounds added to the car's weight also negatively affected performance, especially when all that extra weight was over the rear axle. Despite the low sales, the 3000 GT Spyder did bring renewed interest in hardtop convertibles, a trend that popped up on several other cars in about another decade. Fiat Multipla Cabriolet. The Fiat Multipla was already a controversial name in terms of design, and its cabriolet version pushed the boundaries of difference to a whole new level. While praised for its cleverly designed interior that created spacious seating for occupants, it disappointed with its exterior styling, resembling a bored preschooler's doodle. Transforming a multi-purpose vehicle, MPV, like the Multipla, into a convertible was a bold idea, but seemingly unsuccessful aesthetically. The Multipla's original design, with its distinctive front end, stacked headlights, and wide, boxy body, created a unique look. When the roof was removed, these lines became even more confusing and disproportionate, resulting in a bulky and clunky overall appearance with the top down. Furthermore, converting an MPV into a convertible may have affected the chassis rigidity or significantly increased weight, reducing the Multipla's inherent versatility. Lexus SC430. Once expected to become a reliable convertible, the SC430 ultimately became Lexus's embarrassment, described with harsh adjectives like hideous, sluggish, heavy, fat, and ugly. Lexus stated that the SC430 was inspired by French Riviera yachts. However, the designers must have confused its image with cargo ships. Despite being equipped with a fairly smooth 4.3-liter V8 engine, producing 288 horsepower, capable of reaching 100 kilometers per hour in just 6.2 seconds, the Lexus SC430 was still not highly rated technically. This was because the car's suspension was too soft, causing trouble for drivers in turns. A luxury car should ideally provide a smooth driving experience and a sense of security, but the SC430 failed to deliver that. The combination of an out-of-sync design and unexpected driving performance turned the SC430 into one of the quickly forgotten convertibles in Lexus history. Citroen C3 Pluriel. The Citroen C3 Pluriel is considered a perfect example of how not every car should have a convertible version. This car had too much in common with IKEA furniture. Can you imagine having to manually disassemble and reassemble your car, especially to this extent? With the C3 Pluriel, users had to operate completely manually to fold the roof. What's more, the roof frame didn't fold with the rest of the roof, leaving two large arches that you had to store yourself. This not only meant more work, but it also meant that if you left home with the top down, you'd better pray it doesn't rain, because you can't put the top back up now because you left the arches at home. You might be thinking, do they fit in the car? No. Citroen didn't create any special racks to store those arches in the car, so if you want to bring them along, they'll stick out of the car like a moving house. This is probably one of the most inconvenient cars for users who want to enjoy the fresh air. Chrysler PT Cruiser Convertible, 2005. Not long after Chrysler first sold their weirdest car, the Plymouth Prowler, Chrysler followed up with a more practical, though still strange in its own way, option. The PT Cruiser, first launched in 2000, was initially supposed to be a Plymouth, but was moved to Chrysler when Daimler, their then partner, decided Plymouth wasn't necessary and planned to close it down in early 2001. Designed by Brian Nesbitt, who later went on to design the similarly styled Chevy HHR, the PT was a huge success, selling over 100,000 units annually for its first 6 years. It was even sold in Europe, though it wasn't as popular there. Unlike some other entries on this list where a convertible version was added to the lineup to help boost declining sales, the PT Cruiser was still selling well when Chrysler first offered the convertible version in 2005. Like other hatchbacks on this list, turning the PT into a convertible significantly limited its cargo practicality. Although the back seats could still fold down, the hatchback door was gone, replaced by a relatively small trunk and a small opening, making it quite inconvenient to load items into that tiny space. The PT Cruiser, like the last 2 entries on this list, was originally designed as a 5-door hatchback, which meant eliminating 3 of those doors and extending the remaining 2 to allow access to the back seat, which certainly wasn't cheap to design. Rear seat access became harder thanks to the large basket handle bar mounted directly behind the doors, necessary to compensate for some lost body structure due to the missing roof. The final result was a car with proportions resembling a cut-off minivan. Does this car remind you of past car design accidents? Share your story. Mitsuoka Orochi Convertible, 2006 to 2014. Mitsuoka is a renowned car and accessory manufacturer, holding a fairly respected position in the Japanese automotive industry. However, this could not salvage the image of the Mitsuoka Orochi Convertible, as their engineers seem to have let their confidence go too far. What's even more surprising is that the company stubbornly maintained the existence of this model from 2006 until 2014. The Mitsuoka Orochi is famous for its design inspired by legendary Japanese sea monsters, offering an extremely unique, even bizarre appearance. Its long front, protruding headlights, and flowing lines created a confusing and unharmonious overall look in the eyes of many. When transformed into a convertible, these characteristics were exaggerated, making the car look even more out of place and less sleek. It's hard to believe that a renowned manufacturer would continue to produce a model that received so much criticism for its aesthetics for nearly a decade, showing they prioritized uniqueness over traditional beauty. Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet, 2011. If this list were strictly ranked by weirdness, this car would definitely be number 1. The fact that Nissan spent so much time and effort designing and building something almost no one asked for is even sadder when you consider the financial difficulties the company is currently facing. So, those superfluous resources could perhaps have been used to build cars that truly benefited Nissan's bottom line. The Nissan Murano began its 2nd generation in 2008, and like so many other crossovers at the time, it was based on a car platform shared with sedans, in this case, the Nissan Altima and Maxima. Despite being a somewhat generic premium crossover in a growing market, it was still one of Nissan's most popular models. But what happened in 2011 surprised nearly everyone thanks to, or rather despite, their then CEO, Carlos Ghosn. Instead of offering a Jeep-style convertible on a car that could do it, like the more rugged Pathfinder, Ghosn approved cutting the roof off the more soccer mom Murano. Rumors suggest he ordered it at his wife's request, not through any focus group analysis, meaning the Cross Cabriolet was basically built for a single demographic. Like the PT Cruiser, the entire body structure of the Murano from the windshield back had to be redesigned to compensate for the missing roof and eliminate 3 doors, which in turn eliminated all utility for what some still called an SUV. Its tiny trunk lid sat higher than the bottom of the remaining doors, and meager trunk space was further reduced when the top was lowered. And then there was the price. With a standard Murano costing around $30,000, the price jumped up to $48,000 for the Cross Cabriolet. As the Murano geared up for its 3rd generation in 2015, the Cross Cabriolet fortunately was not continued. If you've ever seen this car on the road, what was your feeling? Share it now. Land Rover Range Rover Evoque Convertible, 2017. This car truly pushes the boundaries of an old car, as the first models only appeared about 8 years ago. But I had to include it because it also competes for the top spot with the Cross Cabriolet in overall weirdness. The Range Rover Evoque in its original 3- and 5-door hardtop variants had a unibody design, not body-on-frame, which deviated from the more rugged off-road designs typical of traditional Land Rover. While it still had 8 inches of ground clearance, its overall height was lower than typical Range Rover models and looked more like a premium shopping car for suburbanites. This demographic, along with the fact that it was also offered as a 3-door model, made it the best candidate for any Land Rover to be turned into a convertible. But that 3-door version sold poorly, and although available from 2011 to 2016, it contributed a maximum of only 3% to total sales in its best-selling year, 2013. This is not surprising given that 3-door SUVs have never sold well for any automaker. What is surprising is what Land Rover decided to do next: the convertible. An idea for the convertible was presented in 2012, with the first production model created in November 2015, and the first models sold for the 2017 model year. Unlike the Cross Cabriolet, which stored its roof in the trunk, the Evoque was more like the PT Cruiser in that it simply folded its roof down over the significantly reduced trunk space. While the hardtop version could easily fit 2 golf bags, only one could fit in the convertible's trunk. Although the Evoque's looks were much cleaner than the Cross Cabriolet, with a straight crease line from front to back, and better than the PT Cruiser's oversized basket handlebar between the seats, it still looked like a cut-off minivan. Land Rover initially announced that the Evoque convertible would be produced in low numbers. 20 shocking secrets about the 1959 Chevy Impala. You'll never look at it the same again. If you've ever cruised down the legendary Route 66, or simply grew up during the colorful decades of the last century, you're bound to remember an American icon, the 1959 Chevrolet Impala. With its bold, bat-wing design and distinctive low-slung stance, it looked more like a futuristic spaceship than a family car. But behind that eye-catching exterior is a whole fascinating story, filled with secrets you might never have heard before. Today, let's pull back the curtain on 20 little-known facts about this '59 Impala. Let's take a trip back to the good old days, where cars like this were dreams, companions on every road. The design battle behind the batwing tail fin. The '59 Impala's batwing tail is one of the most iconic shapes in American automotive history. Looking at it, you can immediately feel its boldness and distinctiveness, a symbol of the optimism and forward-looking spirit of the '50s. But few people know that this impressive shape was the result of a creative tug-of-war between 2 of GM's most powerful figures at the time, legendary stylist Harley Earl and chief engineer Ed Cole. This wasn't negative competition, but a mutual inspiration to push boundaries. According to Chevrolet's chief designer at the time, Claire McKitchan, both were passionate about the Impala project. Harley Earl would visit the design studio, where ideas were formed in clay, and he would sculpt deeper into the tail fins, making them even more dramatic. Then, Ed Cole, the engineer, would drop by, grab the sculpting tool, and carve them even deeper. This was truly rare. Usually the engineer would come in to limit the stylist's flights of fancy, to ensure feasibility and cost. But here, an engineer stepped into the stylist's domain, not to restrict the design, but to enhance it, making it bolder and more unique. The result was a rear end with unparalleled sculptural depth. Just imagine the light hitting those curves, creating the rear three-quarter view that many consider the most spectacular in classic American car history. Roof vents were just for decoration. If you've ever seen a 1959 Chevrolet Impala hardtop, meaning the version without a B-pillar between the doors and no convertible top, you might have noticed a peculiar small vent on the roof. It looked like a little air scoop, quite impressive. And yes, it was originally intended to be functional, but it never worked as planned. The story starts with the 1958 Impala, the first car to carry the name and considered the predecessor to the legendary 59 model. At that time, Chevy designers envisioned a smart and efficient airflow ventilation system. The idea was for fresh air to enter from the hood up front, circulate through the cabin to cool or ventilate passengers, and then exit through the roof vent. It sounded like a very logical and advanced idea at the time. However, in real-world testing, the results weren't as expected. Engineers discovered that the roof vent turned out to be in a low-pressure zone when the car was moving. Instead of drawing air out as intended, this low-pressure zone actually caused air to flow back into the car, creating the complete opposite effect of the original purpose. Instead of redesigning the entire ventilation system, which would have taken a lot of time and money, two things GM wanted to save in a rush. So, they simply plugged those vents. And just like that, an initially functional design became a purely decorative part of the car's identity. Canadian Pontiacs were basically Chevys in disguise. Did you know that in Canada, some 1959 Pontiacs, familiar names like Parisienne, Laurentian, and Stratochief, weren't entirely Pontiacs like they were in the US? This is an interesting story about market differences and GM's business strategy in each country. Instead of using Pontiac's signature wide-track chassis, a factor contributing to Pontiac's reputation for handling in the US, many Canadian market Pontiacs were actually built on the Chevrolet Impala chassis. That's right, underneath the shiny Pontiac shell was basically a Chevy in disguise. Why this identity swap? It was all about manufacturing costs and import duties. GM wanted to produce cars locally in Canada to avoid tariffs on imported US cars, which helped lower prices and be more competitive. However, they didn't want the expense of maintaining two separate chassis platforms for two different brands in Canada. So, the simple and cost-effective solution was to reuse the Chevy chassis, which was already being produced in Canada, and dress it up as a Pontiac. The result was that in some model years, the shorter wheelbase of the Chevy chassis compared to the US wide-track Pontiac chassis created an odd point. The wheels didn't even sit perfectly centered in the wheel wells, giving these Canadian Pontiacs a slightly awkward stance if you looked closely from the side. Ironically, for many years, Pontiac sold better than Chevrolet in Canada, reversing the US market trend where Chevy usually led. This shows that sometimes simple engineering or business solutions based on practicality can create unique products and interesting historical stories about the auto industry. GM saved money by only finishing half the tail fin. The 1959 Impala's batwing fins weren't just a design icon. They also hid one of GM's cleverest cost-saving tricks at the time. Sometimes, the small details tell you a lot about the manufacturing process. Each fin was made from two separate metal panels. Typically, after joining these two panels, the seams would be metal finished. This is a time-consuming and expensive process, requiring meticulous work to smooth the joint until it's completely invisible, undetectable to the naked eye or by touch. Back in 1959, metal finishing cost about 75 to 80 cents per inch. Doesn't sound like much, right? But let's do a little math. 75 to 80 cents in 1959 is equivalent to about $7 to $8 today. And you're talking about inches of seam on hundreds of thousands of cars produced. Multiply that amount by the huge number of vehicles, and you'll see this was a massive potential saving. So what did GM do instead of spending millions of dollars to finish everything perfectly? They made an incredibly smart and practical decision. They only finished the bottom part of the fin, where people standing near the car or crouching down could see. What about the top part? They left it unfinished because it was out of the direct line of sight for most people. You can still spot this by squatting down and looking underneath the fin. You'll clearly see the seam where the two metal panels join. This tiny detail is a classic lesson in balancing desired aesthetics with real-world manufacturing costs. A seemingly simple, small decision helped GM save millions of dollars, and more importantly, almost no one noticed the difference with just a casual glance. Sky-high value, even when beat up or even engineless. Next time you happen to see a beat-up old Chevy sitting on someone's lawn, covered in dust and leaves, you might want to take a closer look. It could be a hidden treasure. Can you believe it? A 1959 Chevrolet Impala convertible, the highly sought-after convertible version, in terrible condition, with a torn interior, tattered top, and even missing both engine and transmission, recently sold at auction for up to $88,500. It's hard to believe for a car in scrap condition. This particular car was part of a larger collection, including over 300 similar classic cars. This leads to a question. Why would a car in such poor condition be worth so much? After all, Chevrolet built over 72,000 Impala convertibles in 1959 alone, so it's not a particularly rare model in terms of original production numbers. The reason lies in the intense appeal of this model within the classic car and custom car scene. Even in its worst condition, the 1959 Impala body and chassis are an extremely sought-after platform. They are considered the ideal starting point for restoration or customization projects. The price of nearly $90,000 for a non-running car shows the huge interest and demand in the market for this model, even if it's just for the body shell or as the foundation for a major project. The famous X-frame was considered weak. One technical aspect of the 1959 Impala and other full-size Chevys of the era that often sparks debate among classic car enthusiasts is the use of the X-frame. Instead of using a traditional perimeter frame with rails running along the sides of the body, GM adopted an X-shaped frame design in the center. While there might have been technical reasons behind this design, some suggest it helped lower the car and perhaps was cheaper to build. Many users reported a lack of structural rigidity. One person recounted a memorable story about their car door not being able to open if the car was parked on uneven ground. This suggests the frame could twist or flex slightly under uneven pressure, affecting body panel alignment. The X-frame had very deep cavities on the sides of the center, where occupants' feet could be placed, which might have been a factor in achieving the low floor height. However, the feeling of shaking, lacking rigidity, especially when driving over potholes, rough roads, or cornering, were common feedbacks from those who drove cars using this X-frame. Although safe by the standards of the time, the X-frame is considered by many later on as a weakness in structural rigidity compared to other frame designs. Steering wheel changed because drivers honked too hard. The 1959 Chevrolet Impala wasn't just striking on the outside, it also featured a rather strange and very practical change right in front of the driver, the steering wheel. Compared to the 1958 model, the 59 steering wheel had a subtle adjustment that came from a very common real-world problem. In 1958, the steering wheel had a sporty two-spoke design with a complete circular horn ring. It looked quite unique, almost like Swiss cheese with decorative styling holes. But the problem arose from that very design. Drivers were pushing the horn too hard. Sometimes traffic gets frustrating, and you want to lay on the horn. The upper part of the 1958 horn ring wasn't well supported. When angry drivers pressed hard on it, it broke a lot. It was frustrating when such an important part was so fragile. Chevrolet needed a solution that would maintain the sporty style while fixing this issue for the 1959 model. Their solution was simple, yet effective. They redesigned the horn ring to include only the lower half, completely eliminating the fragile upper section. The result might lack the perfect symmetry of the 58 model, but it still retained its characteristic sporty look with perforated spokes. Those spokes still exuded the performance and style of the 50s. This small change on the steering wheel reflects a larger truth in automotive design. Some of the smartest solutions don't come from complex engineering calculations on paper, but from observing real driver behavior. It was the taps, the punches on the wheel, the hard pulls during everyday use that led to a design improvement. This is a fascinating example of how real user experience shaped the product, even in the auto industry more than 60 years ago. Ramjet fuel injection was dropped in 1959. Chevrolet was once considered a leader in innovation in the 50s. They had equipped an advanced fuel injection system called Ramjet on the 1957 and 1958 Impala models. This was incredibly modern technology at the time, far superior to traditional carburetors. The Ramjet system offered significant benefits. It helped the engine produce more horsepower, provided more immediate throttle response, and offered much more reliable cold starts compared to carburetors. For speed and performance enthusiasts, this was a big step. However, by 1959, something surprising happened. The Impala completely dropped the Ramjet fuel injection option. Why would such a good technology disappear after just a few years? There were likely multiple reasons combined. First was the high manufacturing cost. Fuel injection systems were much more complex and expensive than carburetors to mass produce. Second was the complexity of maintenance. Ramjet required technicians with specialized knowledge to repair and tune, which wasn't something every garage could do back then. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, was the reality that buyers weren't ready for such advanced technology on their mainstream family sedans. They were familiar with carburetors and might have been wary of the risks or costs associated with a new system. So, in 1959, Impala buyers could only choose engines equipped with carburetors. Although still powerful, especially the 348 cubic inch V8 engine, the predecessor to the legendary 409 engine. They were heavier, less fuel efficient, and often considered boat anchors by enthusiasts compared to the sophistication of Ramjet. While the sporty Corvette kept the fuel injection option for a few more years, the mainstream Impala had to wait decades before EFI, electronic fuel injection, truly returned on popular Chevy models. The car name was inspired by wildlife. Even the name Impala of this legendary car holds a fascinating story. Did you know that this name was inspired by an animal? Yes, the Chevy Impala was named after the swift impala antelope found on the African savanna. This was quite a unique naming choice, evoking a sense of speed, grace, and power. Similar to how the impala antelope can run over 50 miles per hour, about 80 kilometers per hour. This Chevy was also advertised as capable of reaching impressive speeds, over 100 miles per hour, about 160 kilometers per hour. A remarkable figure at the time, especially for a full-size car. Linking the car to a nimble, strong, and beautiful animal was a smart marketing strategy. It helped build the car's image as a vehicle that was not only beautiful and stylish, but also capable of strong performance. The name Impala is easy to remember, visually evocative, and carries a bit of a wild edge, very fitting for the boom in personal car culture and exploration in the 50s and 60s. This name has stuck with the car throughout its long history, becoming one of the most popular and recognizable car names. A resto mod Impala can be worth over $300,000. Continuing the story about the high value of 1959 Impalas, especially the convertible version, the main reason for this soaring value is because these early Impalas are very popular among customizers and professional restorers. There are two main paths classic car owners often take. One is to restore the car to its original factory condition, preserving every detail exactly as it was new. A perfectly restored to original 1959 Impala sold for $220,000 at auction in January of that year. This price is for originality and perfection. The second path is customization in the Restomod style. This term is a combination of restoration and modification, modernization. In this style, custom builders keep the iconic body and classic look of the '59 Impala. They beautify that gorgeous body shell. But underneath the exterior, they replace and upgrade the drivetrain and other components with modern technology. This can include a much more powerful engine than original, a smooth automatic transmission, modern braking systems, often disc brakes instead of old drum brakes, improved suspension for better handling, and even interiors with modern amenities cleverly integrated. The result is a car that has the charming classic looks of 1959, but the performance, reliability, and convenience of a modern vehicle. Well-done restomods with high-quality craftsmanship and parts can achieve values of over $300,000. This price reflects the significant investment in effort, materials, and engineering to turn a classic car into a modern machine hidden under a historical shell. This explains why even cars in initially poor condition, as mentioned in Secret Number 9, still have high value, as they serve as the foundation for these expensive Restomod projects. The lowest seating position ever on a full-size American car. Have you ever gotten into a car and felt like you were sitting right on the floor? If so, you might have experienced the feeling of sitting in a 1959 Chevrolet Impala. This model is often considered to have the lowest seating position compared to any full-size American car ever produced. There's a reason for this, and it's all related to GM's dominant design philosophy in 1959: lower, longer, wider. That was the trend of the era, making cars look more modern and spaceship-like. To achieve a total vehicle height of just 55.9 inches, about 142 centimeters, a very impressive number for a full-size car back then. The roofline had to be lowered significantly, and when the ceiling is that low, the only way to still have headroom for occupants is to lower the seats as much as possible. That meant the seats had to be mounted almost directly onto the floor pan. The result is a very deep seating position, with the driver's and passenger's legs stretched out forward. This feeling is very similar to sitting in a true sports car, providing a dynamic and stylish driving sensation. For young drivers, this was very appealing and fashionable. However, not everyone was thrilled with this low seating position. For older adults, or anyone wearing formal attire like suits and hats, a common image of the 50s and 60s, getting in and out of the car could be a real challenge. You'd have to bend deeper, and getting up from that low position wasn't easy either. Do you have any memories of the 1959 Impala or any other car with a particularly low seating position that stuck with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Speedminder Speed Warning System. Another interesting and quite unique feature introduced on the 1959 Chevrolet Impala was the Speedminder system. In the context of increasing highway speeds in the 50s and 60s, speed control became a concern. The Speedminder system was a simple but effective way to help drivers maintain a safe speed or adhere to speed limits. This system allowed the driver to set a certain speed on the speedometer. You just needed to turn an adjustment ring to select the desired speed level. Once set, if the car exceeded that programmed speed, a small chime would sound to warn the driver. This chime wasn't too loud to be distracting, but clear enough for the driver to notice they were going too fast. This was a proactive way to encourage safer driving in an era when cruise control wasn't common. Speedminder is an example of a small innovation in interior design, focusing on driver safety and convenience. It demonstrates how car manufacturers were beginning to think about driver assistance features, even when technology wasn't as advanced as today. Which feature on the 1959 Impala, or any other classic car, surprised or interested you the most? Let me know in the comments. Sharing the body shell with Buick and other GM divisions. You might be surprised to learn that the 1959 Chevrolet Impala, despite wearing the famous Chevy badge, borrowed heavily from Buick in its body design. Sounds strange, right? But it all stems from a desperate race against time within GM. In 1957, the American auto industry witnessed a major shock. GM designers were stunned when Chrysler's new forward-look models were launched. Compared to GM's offerings at the time, Chrysler cars looked sleeker, more modern, and incredibly futuristic with sharp fins and thin rooflines. Meanwhile, GM was about to release their 1958 models, which looked rather bulky and outdated in comparison. Panic set in at GM. To avoid being left too far behind by the competition, GM scrapped their original designs for their 1959 models. They needed a new, more modern design, and they needed it fast. So, they rushed to redesign everything in just a few months, an extremely short time for such a large project. To save time and money in this emergency situation, they adopted a bold and unprecedented approach, sharing major parts of the body structure across different GM brands. And Buick was assigned the responsibility of leading the design of this core body structure. That's why the '59 Impala shared many key components like the front doors, windshield, roofline, and even the floor pan with other full-size models from Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac in the same year. Each brand still had unique front, nose, and rear tail styling to maintain their own identity, but the core structure underneath was the same. This shows how quickly GM had to act to catch up with the competition's new design trends. It also explains why the 1959 full-size GM cars, though different in the front and rear, had surprisingly many common points when viewed from the side. The iconic car in a shocking and controversial crash test. In 2009, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, IIHS, conducted a special crash test to celebrate their 50th anniversary. In this test, a classic car, specifically a Chevrolet Bel Air of the same generation as the 1959 Impala, became the reluctant star and caused a huge wave of controversy. The test pitted a '59 Bel Air against a 2009 Chevrolet Malibu. The sight of the classic car, which many believed was built to withstand crashes, thanks to its heavy steel frame and thick body panels, easily deforming and crumpling when colliding with the modern unibody Malibu, shocked many viewers. Many people had the notion that old cars were sturdier than new cars, and this test spectacularly shattered that notion. The video of the crash quickly went viral and sparked intense debate, while also creating persistent online conspiracy theories. Why would such a solid-looking car be destroyed so easily? This question haunted many people and led to suspicions about the fairness of the test. Why do customizers like starting with a beat-up car? This is an interesting question. If 1,959 Impalas in good condition can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, why would customizers or restorers be willing to spend nearly $90,000 for a beat-up car with no engine and missing interior? John Wiley, Vice President of Valuation Analytics at Hagerty, a well-known classic car insurance brand, explained the reason behind this trend. He said that many people buy Impalas in such poor condition with the intention of restoring or customizing them from the ground up themselves. They see the immense potential in turning these cars into their own personal projects, a process of labor and creativity full of meaning. For them, The beat-up car isn't scrap, but a blank canvas. Wiley also noted that because so many 1959 Impalas have been customized in various styles over the decades, customizers, or those wanting to restore to a specific style, maybe modern restomod, or even back to original if the car has been heavily modified, prefer to start with an original car in worse condition. An original car, even if beat up, still retains its original structure and details, like body panels, lines, as it was manufactured. This allows them to use it as a precise template for their own vision, ensuring that the basic proportions and shapes are correct. The fact that the car is incomplete, for example, missing interior, drivetrain, or other parts, isn't a big issue for these people. Body panels that aren't heavily rusted are the most useful factor. And the missing interior and drivetrain parts. They can easily buy new replacement parts or fabricate custom parts as desired. In other words, the beat-up condition of an original '59 Impala is sometimes a plus, providing maximum flexibility for someone wanting to undertake a restoration or customization project according to their own vision. If you had the chance to restore or customize a classic car, which model would you choose, and why? Share your classic car thoughts and dreams. Cat's eye taillights. Besides the impressive low headlights, the rear end of the 1959 Impala also had a unique lighting feature. The taillights still kept the characteristic Chevy design with two groups of 3 lights on each side, similar to the '58 model. However, Chevy added a new styling touch to make the '59 different and more modern. Instead of the familiar round shape, the taillights now had an elongated oval shape. These slender taillights, slightly pointed at both ends, quickly became known as cat's eye taillights. This name evoked the image of a cat's eyes, both mysterious and alluring, very fitting for the car's bold and slightly futuristic look. These cat's eye taillights were a small but extremely effective design detail in creating visual distinction for the '59 Impala compared to the previous model and other competitors. Along with the huge bat-wing tailfin, the cat's eye taillights created an unmistakable rear end. The combination of the 6 oval taillights and the deeply sculpted tailfin was the main highlight at the rear of the '59 Impala. It didn't just fulfill the required lighting function, but was also a style statement, helping solidify the Impala's position as a '50s design icon. Debunking the crash test conspiracy theory. Following the shocking 2009 crash test, as mentioned, many people accused the 1959 Bel Air of being manipulated to deform more easily in the crash. These rumors spread quickly online. Some claimed the frame was weakened or even cut somewhere before testing. Others rumored that the car used had been heavily rusted and structurally damaged beforehand, not representing a typical condition. These conspiracy theories reflected the surprise and difficulty for many people in accepting that their beloved classic car was less safe than a modern one. However, a direct inspection of the car afterward debunked these rumors. The car showed no signs of significant structural rust or substantial frame modification. The drivetrain, engine, and transmission remained intact after the collision, showing that the center section of the car was not tampered with. The truth is, the car simply reacted the way other classic cars would react in a modern crash test. Its design was not built to withstand the types of forces and disperse crash energy in the way modern cars are designed to handle. Older cars with a more rigid frame and body structure in direct impact areas often transmit crash forces directly into the passenger compartment, leading to severe deformation and danger for the occupants inside. In contrast, modern cars have calculated crumple zones to absorb and disperse impact energy away from the cabin. Headlights lowered to the lowest legal limit. The '59 Impala boasted many new and improved exterior features compared to previous models. One of the notable changes was the position of the headlights. To achieve a lower, more aerodynamic look, designers moved the headlights down as low as possible. Specifically, the headlights were lowered by 7 inches compared to the previous position. Importantly, this new position was the lowest level permitted by U.S. law at the time for automotive headlights. Traffic laws regulated the minimum position of headlights to ensure proper illumination and safety. Pushing the headlights down to the legal limit showed Chevy's determination to create a design with low, smooth, and bold lines. In fact, the 1959 Impala's headlights were so low that at night you could identify this car just by its headlight beam. This unique headlight position became a distinct identifying feature of the '59 Impala, helping it stand out among other cars of the era. The breakthrough, Flexomatic 6-way power seat. Not only did the exterior change impressively, but the interior of the '59 Impala was also significantly upgraded to enhance comfort and convenience for the driver and passengers. One of the interior high-tech highlights was the brand new 6-way power adjustable seat system called Flexomatic. In 1959, having a power seat was already a very modern and premium feature, often only seen on more luxurious cars. This Flexomatic system allowed the driver to move the seat in multiple directions to find the most comfortable position. You could move the seat forward or backward, up or down. Additionally, the system also allowed adjusting the seat back angle. This provided maximum flexibility in finding the ideal driving posture, especially useful for long highway trips. Besides the power seat, the seat's headrest could also be adjusted up and down, adding further comfort and safety for occupants. This was a significant step forward in interior convenience, showing that Chevrolet paid attention to the user experience, not just the appearance, but also the comfort inside. The shift from sporty car to full family car. The 1958 Impala, the first year the name appeared, was initially just a high-end sporty trim level for the mainstream Bel Air line. It was a more luxurious and sportier-looking variant, aimed at people who wanted a special Bel Air. But by 1959, Chevrolet made a significant strategic move. They transformed the Impala from a trim variant into a complete model line, standing independently in Chevrolet's product catalog. This change marked a clear shift. The '59 Impala not only had sporty coupe and convertible body styles, but also added more common family body styles, like the 4-door sedan and 4-door hardtop. This shows that Chevrolet recognized the immense potential of the Impala name and wanted to broaden its appeal beyond the sports car segment. They carried the faux sport aspect, meaning the sporty look without necessarily having high-performance engines. Of the '58 Impala to a full-size model line. Although it became a family car line, the 1959 Impala still retained sporty design icons, like the familiar checkerboard badge. What's interesting is that even on the family-oriented 4-door Impala sedans, customers could still choose very basic engine and transmission options, such as a 6-cylinder engine and the slow Powerglide automatic transmission. This further confirms the shift. The Impala was no longer just for performance seekers, but for anyone who wanted a stylish and popular full-size car. This change reflected market trends and helped the Impala quickly become one of America's best-selling models in the following years. It evolved from a special variant to the center of the Chevrolet full-size lineup, a position it held for many decades. Out of these 20 cars, which one surprised you the most? And have you ever owned or witnessed any other convertible disasters? Share your memories and thoughts in the comments below. If you found this trip down memory lane interesting, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on other fascinating stories from us. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.